Now we are going to touch a large number of areas in next 45 minutes because it may not be possible for us to go into detail. So we would just introduce to the all participants the remote sensing and the Earth observation systems. Generally, a very simple definition which a textbook uses is the science and art of obtaining information about an object, area, or phenomenon through an analysis of data acquired by a device that is not in direct contact with the area, object, or phenomena. So this is remote sensing. But the practice of remote sensing started before the definition. And then this definition, it was simply realized that this remote sensing is done by all categories of scientists, from astronomers to a huge range of people. So that is why now uh, we prefer to use the term Earth observation, and that too Earth observation from space. But people sometimes also say that there is a remote sensing, there is a aerial sensing and proximal sensing. It means your remote detector is very close to the object, or basically on the ground in hand you are carrying a sensor. We would concentrate on Earth observation from space in today's thing. So obviously what would happen? You have a sensor which has to be on a platform, that is a satellite. The either the sensor should have its own power to irradiate the earth, or it has to depend upon sun. Now for the sun's radiation to interact with the target and reach, you will have perturbations including loss due to cloud. The satellite data must be then sent back to the earth through a communication channel. Then it must be converted into a product and a information, and the information must be used. So this entire system is the Earth observation system. Okay, so is not only the sensor, is not the satellite, is not the processing technique, but from the end to end, that what objective you have, and with this data, what finally you are able to derive. So now it has become a very powerful tool, very useful for hundreds of applications, and we won't touch into applications, but just look at some of the issues. So why this sensor or eye in the sky is important? One, it can see large area. Two, it can cover each part of the globe repetitively. Since we will use electromagnetic radiation, we observe beyond the human eye. Human eye is only in the visible small part. Then, depending upon our engineering, we can get a range of spatial, spectral, radiometric and temporal resolution. I will explain to them. More importantly, we can actually have developed quantitative parameter for agriculture. It can be like leaf area or crop biomass, right? Or even the evapotranspiration. More important, the one satellite picture is can be used for land cover, for forest, for crop, for water body, for urban area. So it is multi-thematic. It allows us to look at linkages. Now, since the data is digitally brought to the earth, it is stored. And if you have a better technique, you can go to the history and do a full retrospective analysis. That is the power. Plus, since you are covering the entire globe, you will observe areas where humans can't reach, basically the poles, the entire ocean, and even the third pole, like Himalayas and many over the forest, many large areas. Human beings are not present everywhere. So this is the power of the system. Now in the electromagnetic spectrum is now from high energy to long wave. What you would see is the atmospheric transmission is shown in the lower graph. Now in the visible NIR and thermal, we tend to use or we prefer wherever the atmospheric transmission is high. If we take the bands where the atmospheric transmission is not high, then we would really get the constituent in the atmosphere that is called atmospheric sounding. So it is invisible NIR sphere channel, thermal at 11 and 12, and you would also see in the microwave band that is from 10 millimeter to 1 meter, transmission is almost guaranteed. So that is why microwaves are used to look through the clouds and in all atmospheric conditions and in day and night to really observe the earth and derive many useful parameters. Let us simply take a look at the vegetation. So if we were to look in the visible or near infrared, we can actually create vegetation indices and get a leaf vigor. If we look in far NIR, we could really get a fluorescence. If we look in thermal IR, we will actually sense the temperature, which as the crop canopy does evapotranspiration, it cools and we can actually measure the evapotranspiration. Once we do the microwave, depending upon the frequency, we will have different type of penetration. Either we can have the canopy biomass or even the entire canopy water column. There is another sensing, that is LIDAR, that will give us the height of the crop canopy vis-a-vis the background. So thus it is now clear that we can really study a large number of phenomena from the space. But the remote sensing or earth observation technology is a very, very powerful and diverse set of tools. If we use small number of bands, maybe 3 to 10, 15, we get multispectral data. If we use 50, 100, even 200 type of bands, which are continuous and narrow, we can generate hyperspectral data. If we illuminate with radar, we get a synthetic aperture radar. When we measure temperature, we get the thermal effect. When we use atmospheric lidar from space, we will get particles in the atmosphere. And if we use NIR, the surface lidar, we would actually get the terrain. We can also see the emissions. So we can get the temperature, the brightness temperature of ocean and land. We can have radar directly underneath called radar altimetry, which can give us the sea surface height, waves, etc. Or we can look through the atmosphere to do the limb sounding. Or we can have a pair of microwave satellite where the distance is measured to very high accuracy. As they move, they are subjected to differential gravity, and we can even measure the gravity. We can measure the radiation reaching outside the earth through irradiance photometry, and from a scatterometer we can look at the roughness, especially ocean, which will give us the wind at the ocean surface, or we can even have the scatterometer over land, which will give us the roughness and water. So thus you can imagine a range of sensors, sensing and observation technology allows us to do a large number of remote sensing application. All this application we can do from sub-meter to hundreds of meter, different ground resolution. We can then also have different accuracy of the data. That is called the radiometric resolution. We can have at multiple times. That is called the temporal resolution. So with all this, what do you do? The goal of Earth observation or the remote sensing is the societal benefit, quality of life, whether it is disaster, sustainability, forest, so many things. So basically, the sensors give us huge amount of data in petabytes. Now that data is converted into products. Then products give us the even gigabytes of information that can be LAI, modeling, crop area, a large number of things. Now this information is actually converted into knowledge and an actionable item. Whether we have to sow the crop, whether we have to irrigate the crop, what is the likely yield of the crop, should we pay compensation to farmers? That is this knowledge which comes from this entire chain. Okay, and at each step in this chain, almost the three order you actually assimilate. So from petabytes to terabytes for data processing, terabytes to gigabytes for information, that to megabyte, and then only kilobytes is needed by the people who really have to act. So this entire system to work, not only you require the sensors or satellites, you have to make data accessible, right? It has to be given in time and cost so people can use. You have to develop the capacity of the people to really understand and use this information. That is why we are having a training program. Now, since there is so much difference in the capabilities and capacities, there are a large number of international efforts to really ensure best use is made of this technology called Earth observation or space technology. How has it evolved? So the photography developed in the 19th century and aerial flight at the beginning of the 20th century. So initially it was mostly used for World War surveillance. So the cameras were there on the aircraft. Then what happens from 1946 onwards, we had rockets which could really cross over the Earth's atmosphere. And later on, the rockets were traveling from Earth to Moon. Rockets only gave oblique low resolution type of photography, which could really be done. 57 onwards, when we had the Sputnik, then US had a very detailed, reconnaissance program with a secret which was only released after 1990. It gave 1 to 5 meter black and white images. Now those images are available for retrospective analysis as Corona. And the civilian remote sensing started with Landsat in July 1972. Then many countries have done, and now after that came the microwave sensors. But the current era, there are more private owned Earth observation, satellite and data than the government agency owned. So now the Earth observation is truly becoming commercial private. Second, because of the various international programs and the access from the natural, the medium resolution and the meteorological data being made freely accessible, the entire humanity can gain from the Earth observation. So this, if you understand that where we are and how we have reached, I will just cover some more, with illustrations. These are three historical photographs. One is the view of Earth taken from V2 rocket in 1946. On the other, the east north corner, you have a mosaic generated from these oblique images. And the first image from a TV type of sensor put on Tyros, right, by US. So this is the first picture, April 1, 1960, where you can see the cloud, and this led to generation of meteorological satellites, right? From that to this resolution, which is of the order of around 30 centimeter, Maxar Technologies WorldView 4 satellite, right? Where you can see the building, the top, each vehicle, markings on the road, trees, lamppost, you name anything, right? So we have covered a huge uh, distance in last 50 years and really truly made the Earth observation and remote sensing a very, very useful tool. So this is a further process that image to really create a 15 centimeter product for defense and security application where you can read what is written on the runway. Of course, if you require better, you can always go for aerial photography and drones. But the space itself has reached almost like uh, 15 to 20 centimeter, 15 to 30 centimeter type of images. When you are viewing the Earth from space, you will view a small area. So satellite can either have a wider view or the camera can look across to cover, or the satellite can be made, the sensor can view from two locations the same place. So this allows us to generate the stereo pictures. So not only the flat picture, the 3D view is possible by this as well as LiDAR. I will explain to you. The multi-angle viewing, it also crosses different amount of atmosphere, right? So not only the surface, we can get detailed information about the particles, their number, their spectral properties, their asymmetry, etc. from multi-angle viewing. Plus, you can also get about the tree and vegetation canopy additional details. If you are able to see the same building is viewing at different times of the day at different angles by the WorldView satellite. So here you can see that even the interfaces and the shadow and so many information. Now, once you have this type of data sets, the processing also is equally then complicated, right? So we need to develop different type of processing techniques. So this is a summary only for NASA. Some of the major Earth observation satellite and what are they measuring. So you can see TRMM is measuring rain, CloudSat is measuring cloud moisture, OSTM is measuring ocean biology, Calypso is measuring cloud and aerosol, right? So then land cover, the snow, ice, soil moisture, you would really see the very large number of parameter. So including the fire, which is then seen, the ocean surface. So each mission with its sensor now can measure a different property, but it also means that we do require a very large number of sensors. And since we have to cover globe, so as of now, there could be more than 600 satellites which are doing Earth observation, right? Which are currently active. So this is an illustration from NASA. If you look with the timeline and what is likely to come in future, so Landsat 9 was launched about 3 days ago. So the color are showing atmosphere, earth surface, water and energy cycle, atmosphere dynamics and climate change. So the future satellites include Clario for calibration, PACE, Glimmer and the JPSS. So, and in 22, what you would see lower bottom, if you can concentrate there, there is NISAR, which is NASA ISRO SAR. There is a SWOT to measure the interferometry of water. There is tropics, there is a geocarb to measure the carbon and tropics for forest biomass. So a large number of satellites and capabilities will continue to be available. This is only one. If you look at ESA and the European Commission, they have 3 categories of missions. There are meteorological missions which are done by EUMETSAT. So METOP and MTG, the Meteosat and MSG, Meteosat second generation and Meteosat third generation, they measure the clouds, water vapor, the sea surface temperature, wind, motion vector, gases like ozone, large number. Then the second category is the Sentinel mission. I will explain in the next slide. And third is the Earth Explorer mission, which are being developed for developing new technologies and doing the Earth science application. Important of them are EarthCare, Aeolus, Biomass and Swarm, right? So they will measure respectively the atmosphere, the tree biomass and the wind from the space lidar. If you look at Copernicus, it originally started as GMES, Global Monitoring of Environment, by ESA. Then it was taken over by the European Commission and named Copernicus. The advantage of this Copernicus is it is an end-to-end Earth observation system. So Sentinel-1 was launched in 2014. We have reached up to Sentinel-5. So these were radar, synthetic aperture radar, day and night, 2 are there. Then Sentinel-2, which has 13 bands and 10 and 20 and 60 meter resolution, covers the globe every 5 days. Then we had Sentinel-3, which is on the sea surface topography. Then Sentinel-5P, which was on the atmospheric constituent. Then Sentinel-4, which is on the air quality and many products, including the effect of COVID, was monitored through that. The greatest power is that all this data is made available free to the entire global community without any stoppage. So it is and the continuity is guaranteed till 2030. So I suggest one should really look, if you are doing a current application, to really look at the full suite of observation available from Sentinel. So these are the missions and their repeat missions up to the Sentinel 6 and 6A. So 2030 and beyond, this data is accessible and guaranteed. So you have global open access data. I'm sure some examples of this will be covered in this training. The France, it started with imaging from spot image. Then the spot image was privatized and now it is done by a private company, EADIS Estrium, as Pleiades is available as a dual military cum civilian. As of now, they have number of missions in altimetry and atmosphere, right? So the mission and the launch period are indicated in the panel below. So they are concentrating. The CNES also has collaborative missions with ISRO. One of them is Megatropics, which is on equatorial, and it measures the energy and water cycle. The second one is the Saral Altica. You will see in the altimeter, which is for the sea surface. And the third one, which is being developed, is Trishna. Trishna is important for your community because it will measure the temperature at a scale where agricultural phenomena, water use and evapotranspiration will be monitored. If you look at JAXA, JAXA's Earth observation is concentrating on a fully polarimetric L-band SAR. Also the GCOM missions, they also have missions in collaboration with NASA. So they are concentrating on carbon dioxide. Plus with NASA, they are concentrating on Global Precipitation Mission, which is a virtual constellation to really do the rainfall mapping of the entire globe with a large number of satellites. So for agriculture, the satellite derived rainfall precipitation becomes another very important input where the ground-based observation system is not strong. The radar altimeters measure the sea surface temperature, and they are very important to study the rise in the sea surface. You can use it to really look at where the sea levels are rising, what are the areas likely to be under danger for inundation, the climate change studies, and so on. You can also use this data for large water bodies and also over ice for polar and east-west running rivers. We will skip this. I would just like to show the Indian Geostationary Meteorological Earth Observation System, starting with INSAT 1A in 1982 to the now INSAT 3D and 3DR, and a large number of parameters are done. Similar are the one which are done by the NOAA through the GOES East and GOES West, by Japan through Himawari, and the EUMETSAT does through the MSG and MTG, which I explained to you. So the entire cloud, rainfall, cyclone, the wind vectors, humidity, temperature profile, and ozone are very important even in the agriculture context. The Indian missions have used a special 3-band, 3-tier configuration of high resolution at 5 meter, a 23 meter 140 kilometer swath LIS3 multispectral, and a 3 and 4 band very wide swath which has a repetitivity of 5 days, but at 56 meter. So here what can be done is you can monitor regional crop growth, planting, harvest, greening. You can use the LIS3 to really look at the field-wise information, identify crops, and you can at LIS4 data where you really have very small field and complicated farming and agriculture systems. This is the configuration of the SCATSAT of the ISRO, which measures the ocean surface winds and is a very important component for weather forecasting. This is the product from the Saral Altica, which allows us to do a lot of application. And this is the 2022 planned NASA ISRO SAR NISAR. Read it as 2022, which is a L-band and S-band SAR built by NASA and ISRO respectively. The launch vehicle and the platform is also built by ISRO. the L-band SAR is the JPL thing. It will give almost like below 10-meter resolution and interferometry and do global mapping. Now, there are two ways of looking at the data. One is either we can have model how radiation interacts with soil and canopy, and with multiple observation we can compute, or we can develop empirical regression. As of now, users don't have to worry because the space agencies and their various mechanisms are already releasing land cover, they are releasing leaf area index, fraction absorbed power, the the volumetric water content, soil moisture at different scale. But there is a lot of science and mathematics that goes behind from the space observation to give that parameter. And also important for user is that they should calibrate it locally for their use. The other part, what has now become important and which is likely to become very important for the tree, biomass and carbon, is the growth of LIDAR. Originally, a vegetation canopy LIDAR was planned, but it was abandoned. Then on ISAT, the glass on ISAT-1 and ISAT-2 had LIDAR. ISAT-2 specifically had 17-meter footprint and was accumulating data over 100-meter strip. Now JD, which is on International Space Station, is directly giving a waveform, and it is also as of now giving a tree height product. I think one product for the coverage of the International Space Station is available to the user. And something very interesting being developed with LIDAR is to really measure the methane concentration, which is the DLR Merlin mission. There are huge number of other opportunities which are slowly becoming. One of that is the GNSS remote sensing. Now, since we have so many GPS, GNSS satellite, and they go on beaming their signals which interact with ocean and the earth. If we see their direct signal through the atmosphere or the reflected, right? So we can have GNS reflectometry and refractometry by just building passive receivers. So this is what it is showing. These type of receivers are being attempted by a large number of private commercial organizations also. Currently, to do better weather prediction, you have to send balloons which do the sounding, the vertical profile of temperature, humidity, wind. But with these type of sensors and already available GNSS, the entire globe, the 3D structure of the wind movement thermal can be seen, which will really make the weather forecasting even much more accurate. Now International Space Station has also become a very important Earth observation platform. JD I explained to you, it also has the photographic thing. Now you just remember, you must have seen the old computer, big computers. You must have seen the radios. So there is power of miniaturization. The same power of miniaturization is being brought to space technology. So one of that is a CubeSat, is a 10 centimeter, 10 centimeter, 10 centimeter type of a 1U. And now you have satellites with 3 such U's, they can really do high resolution imaging. So as of now, about 50% of the satellite launches have become small satellites, 50 kg and below. So this number is going on increasing. As you will see, the power of the CubeSat, right? The resolution is also going on improving. So slowly, as you will see, the Flock 1 which is blue line, which is less than 5 meter, right? It is giving very high repeativity and is giving resolution, which will now slowly start competing with very complicated and heavy high resolution satellites. So this is one such example. You are aware, or you must have heard of this company Planet. They really have large number of more than 200 satellites, right? Each one is either a small PlanetScope or a Flock or a SkySat. The Rapid Eye has been done. They really collect entire globe every day. So their coverage has actually become 300 million square kilometer per day. So miniaturization has reduced the launch cost, allowed mass production and very large deploy. So now at multiple observation time, the whole globe can be viewed. And then for agriculture, you can really use this multispectral data of better than 5 meter resolution. So this, I think, a new class of applications will develop. So these, in addition to the Sentinel and the NASA, there are a range of other websites which give free data. I thought I must share. So now what is going to happen? Even now we have reached about 50 petabytes of data. Now with so many hundreds of missions and the even NASA is assuming that their archive will actually, up to now it is 50 petabytes in so many years. From now onward, every year they are going to add 50 petabytes. Sentinels themselves download 5 petabytes of data. Every day from Sentinel is being done. And we also talked about 300 million kilometer from PlanetScope. Now, when you have daily so much data, if it doesn't reach you same day, you can't do any application. So now, instead of selling data, now Google has come up with this and everybody has a website. So now the data is processed and kept there. You only have to log in from outside and run your code on your small area to get an output. So I'm sure as part of this training, this very, very powerful technology where everything from the data, its pre-processing, registration, everything hassle has been removed from the user. User only needs to go on the website for his area, run a specific code to extract what he wants. So this thing is continuing with large number of new missions, more integration, big data, decision support system, so that the entire, the goal of whether it is climate change, SDG or disaster is all met. Thank you very much. This was one, I think, a hurried overview of Earth observation. Thank you.